Look, I know Riot is trying something new. There's a new seasonal system, and I know that seasonal system is bringing in more engagement. I know that in every season we are exploring the world like the good old days. But 4 years ago we witnessed an hour-long video about retcons, and I can't believe it is still relevant. So yes, the Demacian season is still going. But in a similar way to how Xin Zhao managed to rewrite a piece of Runeterra's history, it seems like things are gonna be changing for Demacia too. And the scary part is, we're not sure just how big the changes are gonna be. For context, ever since Xin Zhao became the main character of a new storyline, we always wondered how is this gonna lead into Xin Zhao failing to save the king during the Mage Rebellion? And how does the timeline even fit into this? Well, the answer is, now it doesn't. And instead of Xin Zhao becoming the character who holds back Jarvan's rage during the rebellion, he died, meaning that about a third of Xin Zhao's lore got retconned. But now, after we learned that Xin Zhao truly died and that he left some holes behind, we started wondering about another thing. How does Jarvan's storyline play out without that one part with Xin Zhao? Well, today we'll learn that the answer is, maybe it doesn't. And that's all in the glory of retcons. So with the new PBE arriving, which to be honest brought in skins that everyone is happy about, we also celebrated the release of Shyvana on the live servers with a new comic. Of course, this comic touches up on Jarvan's story as well as Shyvana's, and so all is good, right? Well, it turns out that the Universe website also got something new. And now, Jarvan's and Shyvana's bios also got updated. And the new changes are interesting. So let's dive into what's going on with the new lore. Of course, since everything is tied to Shyvana, let's start there. The vast majority of Shyvana's lore is the same. However, there are some parts that were taken away, and more importantly, there are new parts that finally explain what happened in the cinematic. So, at the beginning, the bio actually makes sure that we know that there is a rivalry between dragons. You'll see why this is important later. And just like before, we learn about the dragon called Yiva, with her being called an elder beast, which is likely a reference to her looking like an elder dragon. And she guarded her eggs underneath a lost volcano. She successfully protected her eggs against humans until the day a mage managed to steal one of them. And just like how it happened before, because the egg got in touch with a mortal human, what came out of the egg was not a pure dragon, but rather the half-dragon we know as Shyvana. Now, in the original lore, this mage tried to sell the egg in Piltover, but in the new story, after Shyvana hatched, he just became her adoptive father. And so, just like before, he helped Shyvana grow up and embrace her draconic side, after which a big lore change happens. In the old lore, Yiva sensed a connection to her lost hatchling, which was the reason for her to get out of the den and start looking for Shyvana. After she found Shyvana, she noticed that she's not a pure dragon anymore, and so, because she's a half-dragon monstrosity, she was going to kill her. After this, Yiva killed her adoptive father, Shyvana got really angry, and so the two fought. So in the previous lore, Yiva had an active motivation to kill Shyvana specifically. That's why, when the cinematic came out, it was kinda weird that Yiva didn't really care about Shyvana at all. But now, the new lore gives us something else. Instead of Yiva flying out looking for Shyvana, in the story, Shyvana and the mage just randomly stumbled into Yiva's territory. Yep, not the most exciting outcome. In fact, we call this Deus Ex Machina. In other words, it is a coincidence that happens in a story to keep it going. And so, it goes on. So after they randomly stumble into Yiva's territory, because, as was established at the beginning, there is a rivalry between dragons, Yiva doesn't care that Shyvana is her own blood for some reason, and she starts chasing her. Now, during this chase, the mage does get engulfed in dragonfire, just like before, and so Shyvana buries him somewhere in the woods. After which, Shyvana travels on her own, and we get to another new part. Later on, as Yiva was venting her rage on a nearby settlement, Shyvana saw that Yiva got into a fight with a Demacian scout called Quinn. Since Yiva was their common enemy, Shyvana leapt into the fight and she joined Quinn and Valor. Yes, this is directly referencing what happened in the cinematic. Meaning that all of that was happening before Shyvana got together with Jarvan. And no, despite what it looks like in the cinematic, Shyvana and Quinn actually never met before, making some of the scenes seem quite random. But also, now it is confirmed that that dragon was Yiva, and even though Shyvana and Quinn won the battle, Yiva wasn't dead. Now, the bio doesn't exactly explain how Yiva got away, but she did, and so later on, Shyvana started scouting the woods for Yiva's whereabouts. And that's when she found a Demacian warrior. It was obvious he was gonna die, and so Shyvana transformed into a half-dragon, and she carried the broken warrior into the castle of Renwall. Of course, yes, it turns out the dying warrior was in fact Prince Jarvan IV. After which, the story keeps going just like before. Shyvana wanted to flee into the woods so she would lure Yiva away, but Jarvan wanted to help her, so they got the final stand at Renwall. Then, after Yiva arrived, they all fought to the bitter end, which is what was shown in Shyvana's trailer, and in the end they managed to kill Yiva and they took her skull as a trophy, after which they marched into the great city of Demacia, meaning that Yiva's skull is somewhere in there. Remember it for the MMO. At the end, Shyvana learned that Demacia was already distrustful towards mages and magical beings, which meant that Shyvana has to mostly stay in hiding, but she did get some acceptance after she became Jarvan's personal guard. And that's pretty much it for Shyvana's lore. So now, her fight with Yiva started as a coincidence, she did get some new backstory with Quinn, and the rest of the story stayed kinda similar. But now, what changed in Jarvan's bio? You see, from Jarvan's perspective, the story is also almost the same. His mother died during his birth, he grew up with the help of his father and the seneschal known as Xin Zhao. In the military, he became buddies with Garen, with the new part being that he became a commander of the Silverwing Knights. This is a whole new thing, because before he was kinda just a general. After which, the faithful mission that kickstarted Jarvan's story also got updated. In the previous version, Jarvan just led a small battalion into the east to fight Noxians, but now we learned that Noxians slowly sieged the Argent Mountains, and since this is where Sion killed one of Jarvan's ancestors, he took it personally and he wanted to claim the land for Demacia. And so, going against his own advisors, he started a new outpost in the mountains. But of course, being there for a while, the Noxians were ready for something like that to happen. And so, when Jarvan arrived on his Silverwing, he got quickly shot down. In the previous story, Jarvan just got ambushed and then he got shot with an arrow. But now, in the new version, just the Silverwing got shot. I don't think Jarvan would have survived a ballista shot himself. After which, Shyvana finds him in the woods and the rest of the story plays out as it did in Shyvana's lore. Now, this big story change actually appears in the new comic. And so, since the comic is quite short, let's go through that one. The comic starts with big action, because it needs to get your attention in 2026, but it still breaks the chronological order, so let's rewind. Instead, it starts with Jarvan overlooking the new outpost that he established in the mountains. We learned that Jarvan's Silverwing was called Aegis, which is in reference to the Demacian Aegis, as well as Jarvan's own ability, and since their mission was to push Noxians away from the trade route, the plan was to get in there, scare the Noxians away, and try not to fight. And so, they ride out on the Silverwings, they find the trade route, they scare away the Noxians, and, big surprise, there were ballistas hidden in the volley, which shot them all down. And so, Jarvan found himself in the woods with Aegis dead. After this, the Noxians chase him, so he tries to get away, he realizes that he should have listened to his advisors, and on the brink of death, he doesn't see Kindred, which would be typical for Demacians, but rather, just before fainting, he sees the Winged Protector. AKA, he gets to see Kale, the great legendary protector of Demacia. But also, that mirage happens to be Shyvana, which is clever because Shyvana has wings too, and she is here to protect him. But then, when the Noxians arrive, Shyvana saves Jarvan, and the rest of the story happens as it normally does. Which means, in the end, after all the story changes happened, all the cinematics finally make sense, However, that was only possible at the cost of a few retcons. Speaking of which, the full credit for this goes to Twisted, but he noticed that the entire part about the Mage Rebellion as well as the events of the Lux comic are now missing from Jarvan's bio, which may be teasing that Riot is planning on retelling the story of the Mage Rebellion. But since we are currently in a Demacian season, I don't think that will be happening anytime soon. Meaning, I think it's more likely like they are setting it all up for the future. It seems like Riot is setting it up for something else to happen here, despite the fact that the Mage Seeker game exists. So either it is possible that Riot is setting up the Mage Rebellion for a new story in the MMO, or let's not forget that Riot is also working on multiple series as well as potentially a live-action movie. This is totally a setup so the arcane retcons don't happen again, right?